Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Department of Defense 34th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Observance. Please stand for the arrival of the official party. The Honorable Patrick M. Shanahan, Deputy Secretary of Defense. Mr. Michael L. Rhodes, Office of the Deputy Chief Management Officer, Director of Administration. And Major General Marcia M. Anderson, United States Army, retired. Please remain standing for the presentation of the colors, the singing of our national anthem, and the invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Out, right shoulder. Whew. Ready, step.
Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Eddie Kinley will now deliver the invocation.
Let us reverently bow our heads. Eternal Heavenly Father, today we have gathered together in celebration of a man who led a movement because of a dream. But we're here today for more than a man and more than just a dream. We are here because all men are created equal by their Creator, with certain unalienable rights, such as liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We're here because none of us are free until all of us are free. So we ask that you might generate within our hearts a bridge of mutual respect for all mankind, that we might love without judging and live with a spirit of harmony for all people. May this day, this message, and its meaning take up residence within our hearts and be transfigured in our lives, is our prayer in your name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Rhodes.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us here today. To those here who are present, representing the 26,000 in the Pentagon family. More importantly, to those this is being broadcast to. Our Army multimedia team is broadcasting this live around. So all those who are watching now and those who will watch when it's rebroadcast since it's being recorded, we thank you very much for joining us as well. And to those who make this event happen, the many people behind the scenes, the teams, the working groups that put on these events, we want to thank you, but especially to the Joint Service Color Guard, to the vocalist from the Army Band, and to Chaplain Kinley. Thank you very much for adding so much reverence to this ceremony. I particularly want to thank everyone, but I do want to recognize our guest speakers here today. Of course, we have the Deputy Secretary, Patrick Shanahan, sir. Thank you for joining us. And especially to Major General Anderson and her husband, Amos. Thank you for coming here to be with us here today. And particularly, thank you for your flexibility. We've had some adjustments as we were going along, so we appreciate that patience in the process as you traveled here from the Badger State, and we thank you for joining us. This is, if you do the math, this is our 34th MLK event. And if you do the math back, that goes to 1985 was our first one when Secretary Weinberger was our Secretary of Defense. And if you also look at the history books, you'll find that the federal holiday actually wasn't first observed until 1986. The law had been signed, but it wasn't observed in 86. So I like that about the Department of Defense. We're always ahead, and we were ahead in that case as well. But these are always a special event. I grew up as part of the Army family. I will tell you that personally, I didn't experience what was going on in the United States at that time, all the upheaval. My best friend was Dennis Hunt, African-American young man. We shared a crib in Okinawa when our parents would visit and socialize. We both moved to Fort Devens at the same time. We were on base and living in tiny Air, Massachusetts at the same time. I just didn't get it. It was later till I realized the impact and results of Dr. King's efforts. But that's what we're here to reflect today, is a man born in Atlanta, Georgia, cut short in his life and taken from us just shortly after his 39th birthday. But in those 39 years, what a tremendous and powerful impact he did have. He truly helped lead a change in this nation, a change that is still working and taking place today. So thank you very much for joining us for this observance, always important to us. Now it's my pleasure to be able to introduce our first speaker. I will tell you he is an unapologetic son of the Northwest, of the Evergreen State. That other Washington is where he's from, and he's very proud of that. But he's been successful throughout his life, having an impact and driving change. But he also is a person who has grown up with a commitment to service, commitment to giving. And so when he was asked, he immediately said yes. And therefore, on the 19th of July, he was sworn in as our 33rd Deputy Secretary of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Patrick Shanahan.
Okay. Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay? I need a little bit of help. The help I need is if everybody could come forward a little bit and fill up some of the seats in the front of the room. Is that okay? Can we do that? That would be awesome. Yeah, no, you know, I went to church, I would always sit in the back, but my parents would bring me to the front. Oh, that's great. Took a shower this morning. I think we're okay. Yeah. It just makes it feel a little bit closer and gives us a better chance to connect. Thank you very much. "50 years ago, Dr. King shared some very powerful words up at the National Cathedral. I'd like to share those with you today. We are all tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. We are all tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality." Very, very powerful words for the time, and I think very powerful words for our time. So first of all, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be with all of you, and General Anderson, it's such a privilege to have you here, and yeah, I'm just the warm-up act. So this is really an honor for me, and I think Mike Rhodes did a nice job on the introduction, and but I'm just a guy from the West Coast, and that's why I'm not going to stand behind the lectern today, because you know, the formality, I think, that oftentimes drives the Pentagon is also some of the reasons maybe we don't have the same relationships and the connections. So I'm going to today not give you some prepared remarks, but share with you what Martin Luther King Day means to me. Mike mentioned growing up on the West Coast. My father is a Vietnam veteran. He served in the Army, and he was a strong Catholic. I had two brothers. I went to Assumption Grade School. It was the same grade school he went to. And I went to Bishop Blanchette High School. And it's the same high school that my youngest son is attending right now. And when we went to school, the writings that we read were from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, not Martin. And I remember growing up, Martin Luther King was an iconic figure, someone who was leading the civil rights movement. He was in that bigger-than-life stature of like Gandhi. We studied him, but in that context, and we didn't, you know, Father Douglas and Sister Mary Patrick, they were, you know, really working on us to feel guilty or to be obedient or to, you know, find our way to salvation. And it wasn't really until I went to work at the Boeing company that I really learned much about or had a deeper appreciation for the work of the Reverend King. And every year we would honor Dr. King. And one of the things that I would do is sit down and write a note to our employees. And I've always been one of those people who's like, I like to write my own stuff. I don't like to have people give me things. And so I would, being the good little engineer that I was, I'd, you know, do my homework, find things that were either meaningful to me or that were significant to the people I was writing the letter to. And over the years, and I think maybe this was just more me becoming more of an adult or growing up, but it became a period of reflection for me. And you know, Catholics are all about routines, so I was like, okay, when we honor Reverend King, that was to me that time of year where I would look through the lens of Dr. King and reflect on a different part of my life. And the lens that I would look through had two parts. One was, what am I appreciative of? And the other is, what do I need to do better? So today I thought I would share with you my reflections for 2018, if that's okay. Right? Dr. Admiral Bono, are we okay? All right, good. Okay, I always have to check with her because, yeah, she's dialed in on everything. So the first thing in terms of appreciation, the thing I'm most appreciative of is this place I've discovered called the Pentagon. So a year ago, I could not spell DOD. And now I can spell DOD and NDS. And the thing that I've come to appreciate, and I've been a part of some really amazing teams over many years. This is the best team I've ever been a part of, but the reason it's the best team, it's this thing called cohesion. And it's something I'm not sure all of you have a good understanding of and appreciation for, but when you come from the outside and you see how people work together, how they collaborate, how when you really aren't family, you can almost be family. And it's something I feel that I've been privileged to be able to share, and then the inclusion here is utterly remarkable. The work, the other side of this in terms of being better, when I think of Dr. King, and the part of being better was always about how do we get people to, be the we or work better together? And my journey has been, going from being a better listener, where, the Japanese call it having golden ears, to be a real active listener rather than a passive listener. But I've worked over time to go from being more than a listener to someone who tries to understand. And I thought that meant, asking, really, probing questions or, interesting questions. But then I met this guy named Secretary Mattis. And he taught me something special this year. And he said, and I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be around, someone like him. He said, you have to have a willingness to be persuaded. A willingness to be persuaded. And I'd never thought about it that way. I've had a desire to understand, a ability to listen, but not necessarily thought about the willingness to be persuaded. So my work for 2018 is to really understand what it takes to have that willingness. And I've found when I undertake these missions, I always, start with, what is it? But it really does take, 8, 9, 12 months of thinking. That's the work that I would do. I wanted to share that with you because every year this is what Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Observance, Martin Luther King the man means to me. It's that time, and maybe I'll just close by saying it's that time where I get to honor the person, honor his enduring legacy, but it's also my chance to reflect and to grow. And so with that, I thank you for your attentiveness, and God bless America.
Sir, thank you very much for those remarks. And that is what this day is about. It's not just remembering the man, but it's what do we take forward and what do we do with the memory of the man. So thank you for those remarks. They fit so perfectly. You did cause me to have flashbacks to Brother Bill Caslin and People's Baptist Church, because whenever I sat in back, we were all coming forward. So thank you for that flashback as well. I am so thankful this next speaker. As I mentioned, she's shown great patience and flexibility. We had some adjustments in the front end to some different dates, and she was unwavering in one thing, and that is I'll be there. We had some adjustments with some funny events earlier this week, and she was unwavering in the commitment, I will be there. And so appreciative of that she and her husband Amos came here from Wisconsin to join with us today. As you can see from the bio, she's been successful at all levels in the military. Importantly, she's also been successful in her civilian career, currently serving as the clerk of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Wisconsin. What's especially cool there in the bio is she's on the board of directors of the Green Bay Packers. Now, even as a Patriots fan, that is just really super cool. So I can't miss that. But I will tell you one thing I think that stood out to me that is not in her bio, but that is, I think, relevant. She went to Creighton University, which is in the home state of our 24th Secretary of Defense in Nebraska. And a couple of years ago, she was actually honored with the Creighton University Alumni Merit Award for all her work going back and working, all her work working with college and high school age students, because they are the future. And what stands out to me about that award above all awards is the fact that I've actually worked with some Jesuit universities, which Creighton is a Jesuit university. And I will tell you, you think a security clearance background investigation stuff, anything they're doing in a Jesuit university, if they're going to associate you with them like that award, 3 times the level. And so the level of standard, the level of accomplishment, the level of recognition that represents is significant. So it's just an honor to have her with us. So ladies and gentlemen, if you please join me in welcoming Major General Anderson.
Thank you, everyone, so much for that very warm welcome. Mr. Shanahan, as you continue your service as our 33rd Deputy Secretary, thank you for hosting this very special event honoring Dr. King's life, his commitment to service, and his legacy. Mr. Rhodes, you're one of the first people I've met who I can say honestly grew up completely in the Army and in the military. Since you described your crib experience, that takes us way back. But thank you for your very, very long service to our nation and the men and women who are members of our armed forces. Distinguished guests, general and flag officers, members of our senior executive service, to all the senior leaders who serve across our joint force, to all the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, coasties, and our international partners who may be in attendance today. But especially I want to thank some people who are not here and who I think about as our very special and secret weapon. One, our civilian staff members, and two, our family members who support us and encourage us and motivate us. And without them, I think many of us would not be able to focus and do our jobs as well as we do them. So thank you for those who are not here. And also thank you to all of those who are joining us from remote locations. And most importantly, I also want to thank everyone, every single person who was somehow responsible and did all the hard work necessary to organize and support this event. Those are the unsung heroes who work very hard behind the scenes. I am very deeply honored and of the privilege you've given me to take the next few minutes to share some thoughts I have on Dr. King's life and how he evolved over time to lead a movement that we know that was very powerful and was about equality for all people. And he made a very lasting impact on me, and I know for some of the people in this room as well. Now, the bottom line is that for all of us here today, or as I said, in remote locations, we could have all made some very different professional and otherwise career choices. Some of us probably could have been public figures due to our abilities and talents as athletes or artists or musicians or some other performer. Some of us in this room could have decided to be entrepreneurs and start our own business and experience great personal and monetary success by creating the next new product or a new machine or a new process. Or we could have been a researcher and found a cure for some devastating disease. Any of those choices that I just identified would likely be judged by society as an example of a truly successful person and a life well lived. However, Dr. King disagreed with fame or money as the best measure of greatness. Instead, he said, and I quote, "We are prone to judge success by the index of our salaries or the size of our automobiles rather than by the quality of our service and relationship to mankind." And let me just repeat that last part of that quote again. It's about the quality of our service and relationship to mankind that really matters, rather than the acquisition of money and things. So consistent with that opening thought, I'm going to challenge each one of us not just to continue our current commitment to others because we're serving, but to seek new opportunities in both our professional and personal lives to further exemplify selfless service. And as I'm going to try to illustrate to you in the next few minutes, you already have a lot of the tools and the ability. You just need to take those next steps. Now, a little bit about me that's not in your program. And although I never gave it much thought until as I was approaching retirement, I actually have a family history of military service. One of my uncles enlisted in the Marine Corps at the height of the Vietnam War. He deployed and he was stationed at Da Nang Air Base. And no, he didn't get one of those little ping pong balls with a number on it. He voluntarily enlisted in the Marine Corps during that time with a friend of his, just because they felt it was the right thing to do. My younger brother enlisted in the Marines during his junior year in college when he decided he wanted to do something else other than be an architect. And prior to his discharge, he served with his unit in Somalia. Currently, both of my brother's sons are serving on active duty in the, wait for it, Army, hooah. As you can imagine, my brother still wonders how that happened and what I might possibly have said to my nephews, but all I ever tell him is, I'm just a better recruiter than you. And finally, I want to share a few thoughts about my father. As you know, in 1948, President Truman issued an executive order that desegregated the United States Armed Forces. And my father signed up with one of his best friends and joined the Air Force, and he served during the Korean conflict. He really, really, really wanted to either work on airplanes or fly them. But like any other service, he was assigned to do something else. So he became a logistics person, and he was also a driver. Now, during his enlistment, he told me stories about this colonel he used to drive for. Now, it's not so common today for colonels to have a designated driver. Maybe that's, I shouldn't use that term probably, but, and assigned, let's say assigned driver. That probably sounds better. Sorry, colonels, I'm not trying to insult any of you. He said that that was a great job because it taught him a lot. Because he learned about what good leadership is. And he believes, and he learned it from this particular officer, that, you know, leaders, good leaders, great leaders, consider themselves servant leaders. They treat everybody uniformly with respect, and it doesn't matter if it's somebody that they work for or that they work with. And they make people feel valued and special. And he tells me that that was one of his proudest times and what he most treasures. And like so many African American men in those days, he served without expecting that he would realize all of his own personal dreams. And indeed, he told me on more than one occasion, he personally experienced prejudice, such as this one example. He was suddenly the recipient of some transfer orders, which would have amounted to what we call an out-of-cycle move these days. And he'd been told by, and kind of warned by some senior airmen, that there were some people who felt that he should not have that job driving for the colonel, because they felt it was something that he shouldn't have because of his race, and they also felt that it gave him some kind of favored status. Well, he had to break the news to the colonel that he was being transferred, but he told me he never complained about it. He just figured, I'm in the service and I need to go where they tell me to go. Well, apparently the colonel did some investigating on his own, and my father says, you know what happened next? The person who got transferred was the person who initiated his transfer. But despite that experience and others, he chose to stay in the Air Force because he loved it so much, and because he believed that him serving honorably would help other people down the line. And I think he was correct. He's continued his service in our community. He's 88 years old. He's on his third career. He works each day. I call him a lunch guy, don't call him a lunch lady, in the cafeteria at the high school near his home, and he helps to teach, mentor, and train the culinary arts students who are at the high school. So he's still working every day. He's at work right now. So I'm very aware today that I'm only here because of people like him, their courage, their bravery, their sacrifices, and their dedication to service. We often talk about the Tuskegee Airmen as another example of people who served selflessly, not expecting anything other than my honorable service will help others later. The Navajo Code Talkers who supported the Army and Marines in the Pacific Theater, to the hundreds of thousands of brave Hispanic service members who have participated in tide-turning battles as early as the War of 1812. And of course, we cannot forget the many women who in the early days often disguised themselves as men in order to serve in our nation's early conflicts. They did this often in defiance of culture, tradition, and often their own family's wishes to serve in the world wars, and I also want to honor those who are currently serving today. And finally, I know you are always in a hurry in this building because we have about 8 minutes to get to meetings most of the time. But there are some amazing displays in this building. And there's a display that I used to pass by almost every day that kind of stuck with me. And I think that display, if you haven't seen it, if it's still up, commemorates the courage and dedication to service of our civilian teammates. Now, you may not know this, but during the War of 1812, the British decided to invade and burn the city of Washington. As thousands of other people fled the city, many civil servants, at great personal risk, saved some of our most precious records. The documents they packed into, in some cases, commandeered wagons, were the books and papers of the State Department, some of the unpublished information from Congress, the Articles of Confederation, some of our treaties and laws and correspondence dating back to 1789. And along with those early records, the clerks also saved the Constitution, the original Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. So I'm here to say, if you haven't seen that display, or when you get a chance to visit the National Archives and view those documents, I just want you to remember that we owe a debt of gratitude to the past and current members of our civil service, and I'd like to give them a hand. So in 1968, I was almost 11 years old, and for those of you who are doing math, that tells you how exactly old I am. It was just after 6 p.m. on April 4th, 1968, and Martin Luther King was fatally shot while standing on the balcony outside his room at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. He was there to support a sanitation workers' strike and was on his way to dinner when a bullet struck him in the jaw and severed his spinal cord. He was pronounced dead after his arrival at a Memphis hospital, and he was only 39 years old. I remember that breaking news by Mr. Huntley and Mr. Brinkley, as I call them, as if it were yesterday. And as word of his assassination spread, riots broke out in major cities across the entire United States. The National Guard was called out to Memphis and Newark and Detroit and here in Washington, D.C. That night, my grandmother and grandfather, who we lived with, my aunt and my mom, were all very concerned about what was going to happen to our nation. And in the days and the weeks after his assassination, I listened as the adults talked about the best ways to channel disappointment and anger. It was not to take energy to destroy, but to build. It was not to hate people because of their differences, but to find common ground and work together to improve all of our lives. So how does this ultimately all matter to all of us in 2018 and to our colleagues and our families and our friends? As a practical matter, what I think it means is that when we're encouraged to observe his birthday not as a holiday, but as a national day of service, or as they say, a day on, not a day off, we have to think about how can we as people take that and make it not just one day. How can we take it, his legacy and his commitment, one step further, and us in the military, and here, those of you who work for the Department of Defense, take it upon ourselves to encourage others to serve their communities all year long. Because hunger doesn't go away after Thanksgiving Day or doesn't go after Christmas Day. It's there for some people all year long. So in my remaining time, I want to drive why I believe it is so important to honor Dr. King by volunteering to serve in our communities. And I want to provide you a picture of him that illustrates his own personal evolution, how he struggled with doubt, how his vision for change in the South grew out of his personal and professional experiences, and how his commitment to serve should continue to inspire us each and every day. For example, you may not know this, but as a very young boy, he actually wanted to be a fireman. How many young boys want to be firemen? Probably a lot of people in this room are waving their hands right now. Or he later decided maybe I'll be a doctor instead. But what I found about that was so striking was those are professions that serve others. So I think even then, at a very early age, he was working towards who he became. He grew up in an Atlanta neighborhood that was filled with black professionals, doctors, teachers, business owners, and ministers, and they comprised the middle-class community. And his own father was a minister. However, it might surprise you that even as a young man, he was not convinced that he really wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. Indeed, during a religious study class when he was about 13 years old, he openly questioned information that was in the Bible because he was struggling to make sense out of what was written there and what he saw happening to people in the world around him. In addition, he had some other habits that he acquired as he grew up. He actually loved to play pool. He also occasionally smoked. And you can imagine these are some kinds of habits that his father as a minister wasn't too appreciative of. And we know that while he was a good student, he may not have always been as serious as his parents would have preferred. And although he wasn't particularly athletically talented, one of his teammates that I read an interview said he liked to play basketball. He was mostly a guard, and they said he was a pretty aggressive ball handler. So he was a lot like a lot of us, just an ordinary person. But what really changed him was one of his earliest personal experiences. It was when his family sent him north to work summers harvesting tobacco in Simsbury, Connecticut, which is not far from Hartford. It happened when he was 15 and when he was 18. And the letters he wrote home to his mother and father are very candid and revealing. In one such letter he wrote, quote, "On our way here, we saw some things I had never anticipated to see. After we passed Washington, there was no discrimination at all. The white people here are very nice. We go to any place we want to and sit anywhere we want to." In later correspondence to his mother, he continued this thought by writing that, quote, "I never thought that a person of my race could eat anywhere, but we ate in one of the finest restaurants in Hartford, and we went to one of the largest shows there." So his experiences in the North played an important role in his final decision to become a minister after he graduated from Morehouse College. When he applied to Crozer Theological Seminary, he stated in his essay that after that second summer of exposure to racial tolerance in the North, he says, "I felt an inescapable urge to serve society. In short, I felt a sense of responsibility which I could not escape." So in other words, in many ways, he was an ordinary person like us, struggling to understand the world around him and where he fit in, but ultimately deciding that he would answer the call to serve others and be a part of something greater than himself. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, all of us who serve as members of our military or civilians have made a choice to do this above all other things we could have done with our lives. This choice does not mean that we're going to be famous or the subject of books or movies. The choice does not mean that we will be wealthy in many cases. This choice certainly does not mean that our nieces, nephews, children, or grandchildren are going to tell great stories to their friends about us and put our accomplishments all over social media. However, what this choice does mean is that we are privileged to work with some of the finest teammates anywhere, that we are part of one of the most respected organizations in our country, and indeed, I think, in other places in the world. And above all, I think we're the product of some of the best professional training anywhere. We're taught in the military from the very first day how to lead, motivate, and respect others. We're taught to build consensus, make plans, devise and execute strategy. We learn how to leverage limited resources in creative ways. And above all, we learn how to deliver bad news and speak truth to power, especially if it's the difference between our friends and teammates and families and our country being safe. So the bottom line in those skills I just described is exactly the kinds of skills and values that are crucial to the success of our local community organizations, food pantries, charities, youth mentoring organizations, such as the Boys and Girls Scouts or Boys and Girls Clubs, youth sports teams, our churches, neighborhood groups, school boards, and the like. You may have thought that your service started and stopped with your career in the military or your civilian service. But when I began my remarks, I wanted to remind you and I wanted to challenge you that we need to leverage our existing talents, because that is part of our obligation to observe and commemorate Dr. King's legacy and his service. It's not just another holiday on the calendar. It should be a national day of service. And I think that we, as people who have already dedicated a large portion of our lives to serving and who possess, I think, a wealth of talent, we need to take this step, this big, giant step, further by leading the way and challenging others we know to serve their communities all year long. As Dr. King also said, everyone has the power for greatness, not the fame, but greatness, because greatness is determined by service. And I want to leave you with one final thought as I close. I think we also need to look at ourselves as people who have had the courage to make this choice to serve, to dedicate ourselves to public service. And this is illustrated by one of my favorite quotes that's been attributed to Dr. King. Courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles. Cowardice is submissive surrender to circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. So serving others is not only a courageous thing to do, it is, in a world that is often full of other people who make easy and false choices, ultimately the right thing to do. Thank you for allowing me to share a small part of this day with you as we commemorate a great American. I want to thank you again for your commitment, sacrifice, and dedication to duty. But most of all, I simply want to thank you for being you. Thank you.
Thank you, General Anderson. Everyone, please be seated. Thank you for the remarks, tying together the perspectives, the added perspective, and Dr. King's past. You mentioned, though, that there are many before who paved the way through their service to give you and others, all of us, opportunities. But it's important to remember, once we have that opportunity, what do we make of that opportunity? You've made of your opportunity tremendous gains and successes in the military and the civilian environment, but I will tell you probably just as importantly is your work with young high schoolers and college kids, with the nonprofit organizations that she's on the boards and charities of. So thank you for the views, thank you for the perspectives, and thank you for spending time with us. And so we have a small memento to General Anderson, U.S. Army retired, for your commitment and service to excellence, and for being the keynote speaker here at the Department of Defense 34th Annual Martin Luther King Observance today here in Washington, January 25th. Sir?
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. That's good. Can we take a little picture here?
Chaplain, could you please provide the benediction?
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the benediction.
Let us bow our heads. Our Father and our God, we thank you for what our ears have heard, what our hearts have felt. As we commit our lives to service and sacrifice, we ask and pray that you will continue to bless us, continue to bless this fine country that we so proudly serve, is our prayer in your name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the departure of the official party.
Until I make a couple remarks. I mentioned I've been in the Department of Defense my entire life. I've held a DoD ID card every day of my life. I'm proud of this institution. I'm tremendously proud of it, not because it's perfect, but because it's always working to be better. When I was just one, I'm going to do dates here, 1963, Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And in it he said, I have a dream that someday I will live in a world where we're not judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of a character. I have a dream. That's what I think of in the Department of Defense. We are focused on performance. We are focused on results. When the men and women in uniform look to their left flank and their right flank, they're not looking at the color of skin. They're looking at the uniform that's being worn. They know that that's the person who's going to take care of them. It doesn't matter their gender. It doesn't matter their ethnicity. It's a fellow service member in arms that's going to take care of them. If you listen to the I Have a Dream speech, it always strikes me at the end he concludes with, let freedom ring from the mountaintop, from the highest mountain. Let freedom ring from the lowest valley. Let freedom ring from the home and the town and the city. And he goes on with that mantra of let freedom ring. And that's what you heard in the deputy's remarks. That's what you heard in General Anderson's remarks. Our challenge is to go out, to make ourselves better. What will we do this year? Our challenge is to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented and make things better. So that's what we are here to do today, and that's what we will do going forward. We will make things better in our actions. We will make things better in our words. We will make things better with our service. We will make things better with our compassion. And that's our challenge and that's our charge to go forth from here today and let freedom ring. So thank you very much for joining us here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This concludes today's ceremony.